The future officers. My name is Tejas, and I welcome you all to episode 7 of ILEAD. In our first section today, we are discussing about a component of this series called as Now You Know. What is this Now You Know? It is the mains analysis portion of this series. Under this, I thought we'll concentrate more on this section for a little while because the mains examination is approaching, and there are a lot of aspirants who are writing mains this time. I thought it will help them. In our first section today, we are discussing about the editorial, okay, editorial which appeared in the Hindu a few days back. So it read China's mega dam on Brahmaputra and its concerns in India. Before we start discussing about China's mega dam here, why is the hydroelectric project a cause of concern for India and its neighbors? And um, before we see that what challenges India faces in developing the strategic hydropower countermeasure in the Northeast and all of such aspects, I want to basically tell you a little bit about Brahmaputra River for the benefit of those who are freshers, right? So over here, Brahmaputra River, it starts from this place called as Kailash Manasarovar. In Kailash Manasarovar, there is a small glacier, right? This glacier is called Chem Yang Dung. Okay, what this is the name of the glacier, Chem Yang Dung. Now, from Chem Yang Dung, there is a river which originates and flows all across the Tibetan region. In the Tibetan region, the name of Brahmaputra is different. In the Tibetan language, it is a different name. What is the name of this? It is called Yarlang Zangbo. Okay, Yarlang Zangpo basically in their language means the purifier. So after flowing through the entire Tibet, between the mountain ranges of the Himadri and the Kailash, it then comes near Arunachal Pradesh and near Namcha Barwa mountain. It takes syntaxial bend. Now, what is the syntaxial bend, you might ask? Syntaxial bend means almost a 90-degree shift. It then enters Arunachal Pradesh near this town called as Sadia town, near this gorge called as Bihang Gorge. Okay, and then it flows through Arunachal Pradesh with a rapid force because Arunachal Pradesh is again a very hilly terrain. You see a lot of ranges like Mishmi Range, okay, Mikir Range, all of these things, right? So once it crosses the Arunachal Pradesh, it then flows through the Assam plains with all its glory and rapidity, and then it enters into Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, it is joined by Ganga, okay, and that it becomes another story. It later goes on to form the Sundarbans in Bengal, West Bengal, and Bangladesh. Sundarbans is formed. That is another part of the story. Now, why this is in news is because China recently had this huge function. Okay, and in its huge function, they announced that they would be constructing a massive hydropower project. Now, this massive hydropower project, mm, it is said to be one of the largest in the world. Okay, before this, China had another project, which itself was deemed as one of the largest in the world. It was called as Three Gorges Project. Okay, Three Gorges Project. Now, this Three Gorges project was in this river called as Yangtze. That's another part of China. That itself was one of the massive, largest projects on the whole earth. Now, you know the capacity, just to give you a small comparison, the capacity of this Three Gorges project was 20 gigawatts. Okay. Or you can say 20,000 megawatts. This was the capacity of the Three Gorges project. But over here, we see that the capacity of this new dam, which is yet to be named, this is said to have a 60 gigawatt capacity or 60,000 gigawatt capacity, which is almost three times the size and capacity of the earlier Three Gorges project, right? It is said to raise concerns about flooding. It is said to raise concerns about ecological disruption. It is said to raise concerns about strategic vulnerabilities. Okay, so these are all the different things that everybody's concerned about. So many experts, so many politicians in Arunachal Pradesh, the CM himself is concerned about. Now, we come to the next part of the discussion in which we try to ask ourselves this question. That is, why is China's hydroelectric power project on Yarlang Zangpo a cause of concern for India and its neighbors? Okay, fine. It is building something on the upper riparian area of Yarlang Zangpo. Okay, and Brahmaputra is then coming to us. But is it really a concern for us? And if it is a concern, what are the different dimensions that we should be concerned about? See, the first one is called as the strategic location. Where is the dam being constructed? The dam is being constructed in the Tibetan region, but right before it enters Arunachal Pradesh, right before it enters Arunachal Pradesh, there is this construction. So, who has significant control here? The significant control is with China in this, right? So they will control how much of water flow has to reach Arunachal Pradesh. They will control the water dynamics in this particular region. So who has the strategic control if this project comes into implementation? It will be China who has the strategic control. The second is a flood risk. See, when they stop that level of power to generate that level of electricity, there is always a risk of a sudden water surge. Okay, a sudden water surge. And why would this be? They can either voluntarily release it or they can involuntarily also sometimes release it. But other than this, there can be engineering errors. Okay, there can be climate induced glacier melt. Okay, climate induced glacier melt. Now, all of this would major significance when it comes to the ecological flows which is entering into India. Is this clear? Now, what is the third aspect of this? The third aspect is information asymmetry. See, when it comes to sharing hydrological data, China has been extremely inconsistent. Okay, China has been extremely inconsistent with respect to what? With respect to sharing hydrological data. Now, given their past that they are not sharing anything, how can we believe them? And if they are inconsistent in sharing this data, it would make India's flood forecasting very, very difficult. And if flood forecasting becomes difficult, disaster preparedness becomes difficult. How are we telling that they are inconsistent? Because in 2013, we did sign a MOU with them. We did sign a memorandum of understanding with them. Now, despite signing this memorandum of understanding, they have not been consistent in sharing the data. So, flood forecasting becomes difficult, disaster preparedness becomes difficult, so disaster management becomes difficult, everything becomes difficult. Why? Because they're not sharing information in the first place, right? What is the fourth impact here? The fourth impact is the environmental impact. See, downstream hydrology, okay, downstream hydrology is very different. Whatever you do in the upstream, it has a severe impact on downstream. It could disrupt the flows of the tributaries. The tributaries could change its trajectory entirely, and hydro projects in India could also suffer. Yes, if I have to give you a small glimpse, almost northeast in India has 80% of the potential with respect to construction of hydro project, but it vastly remains okay. Even though there is 80% potential, they have hardly made any use of it, right? The next aspect is the climate vulnerabilities. So the project's potential to increase the discharge under warmer climate conditions could intensify the ecological balance and flood unpredictability. Okay, so the project with respect to the potential discharge, usually if the climate is getting warmer and warmer, usually what is going to happen? The ecological imbalance is disturbed. Okay. Next is the geopolitical tensions. See, Arunachal Pradesh, already there is a lot of tensions. So many tribes already create a lot of problem. It is a disputed region wherein the people inside, the people outside, okay, people from the neighboring areas, everybody creates a lot of tension. Now, if China is planning to have this unilateral infrastructural activities, in that case, it would worsen the bilateral trust which is there between India and China even more further, right? So, what is going to happen? It is going to worsen the bilateral trust. Okay. After this, what are the challenges that India would face in developing a strategic hydropower countermeasure in the Northeast? Okay. So the first one is called as delayed implementation. So what is this delayed implementation? Okay. So India, many experts, what they told is that, see, China is building a dam there. Why don't we also build a dam at the entrance of Arunachal Pradesh so that we also are able to counter the vagaries of whatever river water is flowing into India. If it is more, we can control it. If it is less, we can release the water which we have already stored up in our dam. But despite this proposal being made by Niti Aayog, which is a very good proposal, it's a super proposal to counter this. But in our country, there is a lot of democratic process because of which we have seen little progress and very, very slow execution when it comes to this. The second one is the local opposition. See, the in Arunachal Pradesh, there are a lot of these tribes who stay, and these tribes have started opposing the dam construction which could happen here. So they are afraid of the reaching the consensus because the tribes almost never agree on one certain thing. The third one is the administrative hurdles. There is Ministry of Jal Shakti, which usually looks into such kind of concerns, along with National Hydro Power Corporation. National Hydro Power Corporation. Now, they have yet to conduct an essential field investigations, stalling the project. After this, the fourth point is the hesitation, which is there. What is the hesitation here? See, despite knowing the risks, India has been very cautious about building strong water storage defenses. Why is India fearing? Because we fear what? Ecological and political backlash. Okay, if something happens to the environment, what is going to happen? All the environmentalists will get on the road and they will start protesting. Or else, if something happens, there might be a political backlash wherein the local politicians might start going against the central wishes. Okay, so almost we see that this portion is there. And then we come to ecological sensitivity. What is this ecological sensitivity all about? The eastern Himalayas, we see, is a very, very environmentally fragile ecosystem. Okay, and when I tell you environmentally fragile ecosystem, what I am trying to tell you is that large dams, if it is being constructed, what will happen is that there is always the risk of triggering landslides. Okay, there is always a risk of triggering landslides. So, with the landslides, there could be forest loss, there could be biodiversity threats, etc. Okay. The last one is the coordination deficit. What do I mean by coordination deficit? It is the absence of sustained coordination between different levels of the government. It could be central level, it could be state level, and it could even be the local agencies who are there. There is no one voice which represents all of them. The agencies, they hamper very swift and unilateral action is usually not taken because one person tells something, one more person tells something, and one more person tells something else. So there is always that gap between what these three levels of government are telling on a unified action about the strategic infrastructure projects which are going to come. So, what could be the solution for all of this? The solution, the way forward would be some data sharing mechanisms, some multilateral engagement strengthening, okay, some regional coalition building. You have to use more and more words like this. Some conflict resolution institutionalization, okay, diplomatic pressure intensification. So if you use words like this, okay, it would act like brilliant filler points for not just this answer, but so many other answers in your international relations as well. Okay. So with this, we finish the first aspect of now, moving on. We have another news which had appeared in the Hindu a few days back. In fact, a lot of newspapers actually tried covering this, and there were a lot of articles about the mangroves. So, before we know about why exactly mangrove was called as the buzzword a few days back in all the newspapers, we have to know a little bit about what exactly is this mangroves. So, mangroves is something which is very commonly what we would have normally studied in our environment. Nevertheless, let me just cover this for the benefit of the freshers. Now, mangroves are salt tolerant. They are salt tolerant. They are called as halophytes. They are salt tolerant trees and shrubs. Where are they found? They are found in the tropical regions and subtropical regions in the intertidal zones. Now, what do I mean by intertidal zones? Intertidal zones means that they are the place where the land meets the sea. You can also tell that the whole mangrove ecosystem as a whole forms an ecotone. Ecotone is where the place where two adjacent ecosystems meet. And there is a very special type of species which is grown here, that is mangroves. Okay, that has distinct characteristics. These are called as edge species, right? Having said this, now let's move forward. What do we mean by the significance of this particular article? The significance of this in this article, they're trying to tell that until 1980s, this whole buzzword of about mangroves was not very widely, very popular. But however, it was understood by the communities that mangroves is something which is very important because they were living around them. They were they relied on them for their everyday fodder, for their everyday resources, for fishery, for livelihood, etc. Right? So for resources, the communities relied on them. But today, if we see, this whole mangroves has become like a buzzword. For almost everything, we use mangroves, mangroves, mangroves. Like right from disaster management, we use mangroves. Almost to that extent, wherein if there is a cyclone, if we are discussing a measure or solution for cyclone, like for example, the Odisha cyclones, mangroves were used to control the damage. If we see the 2004 tsunami, if we see the areas of Pichavaram, we see that mangroves acted like an ecological barrier for the tsunami to stop the tsunami from entering and destroying and creating havoc in the villages which were behind the mangroves. So it acted as a savior. So in disaster management, it has become very prominent. Then second thing is when we talk about climate adaptation. Climate adaptation, especially with respect to the carbon sequestration. Okay, it is found that mangroves have a lot of potential to sequester carbon. Then when we talk about improving the fish stock, improving the fishery resources, again, mangroves become very important because most of the fishes they come, they lay their eggs, and most of the fishes when it becomes big, it again enters the sea. It stays in the mangroves until it can become big. So the mainly for enhancement of the coastal fishery resources, lot of inland fishing is also cultivated in the mangroves. So for all these reasons, fishery resources also, you see that mangroves plays a very big important role. And apart from this, conservation of the shoreline. Again, mangroves play a very important role. Now, what is the turning point for the mangroves? What is the turning point for mangroves? At one point of time, what the communities used to practice, how is it so that today it has become a buzzword? How is it so that today it has become so transformative in nature? For everything, we are seeing mangroves as a solution. Was it always like this? We'll first try to understand this through the journey and trace it backwards. See, 1989, what was happening? All this climate change and human responses, everything was happening. Then Tokyo and there were climate summits which were going on. At that one particular point of time, this man who was responsible, the same man who was responsible for our green revolution, who is MS Swaminathan, he found out a strategy and he proposed that mangroves can as a brilliant solution when it comes to climate resilience. Okay, when it comes to climate resilience, mangroves can act as a brilliant solution. He highlighted that right now there are many threats which the world is facing. What are these threats? Like, for example, there is sea level rise, there is salinization, there is cyclones, so many other things. And he suggested how mangroves can act as a measure to counter these threats. And it can, by improving their genetic research and by fostering sustainable management, we can make mangroves as a tolerant crop for as a tolerant crop. Okay. In this whole survival of this whole ecosystem. Now, what were the key contributions of MS Swaminathan? Okay. The key contributions of MS Swaminathan in 1990s, we see that he founded something called as ISME. What is this ISME? It stands for International Society of Mangrove Ecosystem. So this was found. Then in 1992, he created a charter. Okay. And what was this charter about? It was a charter for mangroves which were integrated into the UN World Charter. Okay. So the UN World Charter, mangroves were integrated into it for the conservation of nature. Okay. Then later on, there was this particular system which was developed, which was called as GLOMIS. Now, what is this GLOMIS? GLOMIS stands for Global Mangrove Database and Monitoring Information System. Let me just repeat this. Global Mangrove Database and Information System. Okay. So, Global Monitoring Database and Information System, that is nothing but GLOMIS. Okay. So, understand this. And later, we see that there was in the process of improving the mangrove ecosystem, they established something called mangrove genital resource centers. Okay. So this was the key contributions of MS Swaminathan in preserving and saving the mangroves. Now, moving forward, let's try to quickly make or understand what exactly is India's mangrove management, how exactly has it been? See, when we talk about India's mangrove management, initially, that is pre-1980s, mangrove conservation was not at all given importance. They had, in fact, government had told that you can clear the felling of mangroves. It is not so important. Why can you clear the felling of mangroves? If you want to do agriculture, go ahead, clear the felling of mangroves. But slowly and slowly, there was in the 1980s, in the late 1980s, there was something called as Forest Conservation Act in 1980, which was enacted. So this Forest Conservation Act had something which was very peculiar, right? So they had made policies for making the forest, but however, mangrove degradation, it did not lay a lot of emphasis on this. So because of this, mangrove degradation, it continued. Okay. So degradation continued. And next, after 1990 onwards, it was MS Swaminathan who came to the rescue, and he had founded the MS Swaminathan Research Foundation. Okay, Research Foundation. And what did this Research Foundation do? They had introduced something called as forest, joint mangrove forest management. Now, this joint mangrove forest management was this program which was started in 2000. Now, what was special about this particular program? That is, from the shift of top to down conservation, it had introduced something called as participatory model of saving the mangroves. So in this participatory model, lot of communities got involved, lot of NGOs got involved, and the government also got involved in the lot of conservation efforts along with the locals. So, with all of this, it was a very integrated approach. One more thing which eventually was integrated was something called as the fishbone method. This is again very important. In this fishbone method, you can see this particular picture which is given over here. So fishbone method is a normal hydroecological technique to restore the degraded mangroves by mimicking the natural tidal flow. However, the nature normally has its tidal flow. It is normally in a fishbone method. So what we try to do here is we try to mimic it in a fishbone pattern. We've all had fish, no? So when we are having fish, how does the bone look? It looks like this. So that is how it is constructed, in which there will be one main canal and there will be so many lateral channels like this. So in this lateral channel, so many fishbone branches, they distribute the water evenly so that even in barren saline areas, we'll have equal access to waters. Okay, so overall, we can see that about 4,991 square kilometers of mangroves are there in India. And in the Indian State of Forest Report 2023, we can notice a total of 16.68 square kilometer increase. It's very minimal. So we can see this much of mangrove cover increase in the recent forest report, right? I hope that this has enhanced your knowledge about the what you traditionally read in your textbooks of environmental studies. So with this, I hope that you'll be able to write better answers also. Moving on to the next component of our series, which is by the people, which is basically our ethics and essay value addition. Today, on July 29th, we are celebrating the International Tiger Day, right? So it's a very significant day, very important. And UPSC's favorite animal has always been the tiger. So we have to know a little bit, let's try to understand some examples of heroes who have lived in India, who have saved the tigers, and who have played a very considerable role in increasing the tiger population in India. Just to give you a little bit of context on this, just 2 decades back, the tiger population was negligibly low. If I have to tell you, it was 1,411. This was the strength to which the tigers had dropped. But due to the efforts of many, many superheroes, not like we generally tell, all superheroes don't wear capes. So right now, the tiger population has increased to 3,682. Okay, which is a very, very considerable change. And because these humans refused to let these tigers vanish, now these tigers are roaring again, right? So let us see some superheroes who made this possible. If you see, this person right here is Dr. Ullas Karant. He is the scientist who protected the tigers. For almost 40 plus years, Mr. Ullas Karant, he worked in Karnataka's forests, right? He worked in Karnataka's forests and he built science-backed waves to save the tigers. So he took a scientific approach. He saw wherever the technology could be integrated to save tigers. What were these scientific interventions? One would be the camera traps. Next is a data-driven approach. Okay. So because of all of this, he even wrote a lot of books, right? So you can see all this information about him, which made him win all these awards. Next, after this, we are looking at this person called as Valmik Thapar. Now, Valmik Thapar, he has earned this name called as the warrior of tigers. Okay. So in the 1970s, Valmik was the voice for the tigers in Ranthambore. You all know where Ranthambore is. So he is the person who helped shape the India's tiger reserve policies. So India's tiger reserve policies got shaped by his efforts, and he was the person who shared the stories of different tigresses like Machli. Right now, Machli is a very famous, tiger. Right now, Machli is a very famous tiger in the, conservation world. After this, we go to the next person. His name is called as Kailash Sankala, right? So he is very famously called as the Tiger Man of India, and he is the person whose seed was sowed, and because of this, Project Tiger was successful. He also has one more nickname. He's called as the father of Project Tiger. In 1973, he sparked a revolution with just one idea. That is, to save the tiger is to save the forest. Okay, this was the slogan he gave. To save the tiger is to save the forest. And today, more than 50 tiger reserves are there, which carry forward the legacy of Kailash Sankala. After this, how can we have so many men in this particular example race and not have a woman? We have one tigress who saved all the tigers as well, and she is called, or she is nicknamed as the Tiger Princess. Okay, so who is this Tiger Princess of India? She is none other than Latika Nath. So she was India's first women wildlife biologist who took a lot of efforts to save this particular apex predator. So she had spent almost 25 years deep in the wild, tracking, studying, and standing up for the tigers. So, what I mean to tell is that all of these examples, you can use them in your ethics answers. You can write some keywords like environmental stewardship, compassion for animals, compassion for the weaker sections, animalism, environmentalism, climate justice, environmental justice. Okay, you can use all these words and quote these examples, and this will add a lot of marks to your answers. It's all about how you use them and where you use them, which makes your answers look very, very impactful. With this, we conclude today's session, and I hope that you found these three news articles very, very useful, and I hope that you're studying very well. If you have anything to share with me, or if you have any doubt, please leave a comment below, and I'll be sure to check them and reply back to you. And let's meet again in the next class. Until then, this stage is signing off. Thank you, and have a nice day.